for so many reasons. Good evening. Tonight we're learning Maseches, Pesachim, Daf, Yud Beis, and as well, most of Daf Yud Gimel and Aleph. It is a Thursday night after all. For this Daf, more than others, I just wanted to give some Divrei Hakdama. As well, there's an outline here on the front shender if anybody wants to see the summary. It's also included in the Google Doc that I sent, but it really does help. Just so that you know, the entire Yud Beis and Aleph is prepping for a question. The entire Yud Beis and Aleph. No, it's not complex, but you just have to know, you have to like hang in until we get to the question. And I'll preface in the following way. Let's say in a secular court of law, so they bring someone to the stand as a witness and they say, tell me what you saw. And they say, I saw person X shoot person Y on day 2, whatever it was. So in halacha, we have to decide how we embrace that. And let's say there's a conflicting witness who says, no, it wasn't on day 2, it was on day 3. So they're mutually exclusive. Someone's got to be wrong. So what we're going to do first is analyze what our margin of error is between witnesses as it relates to hours. So let's say I said that the shooting was at 3 p.m. and you said the shooting was at 5 p.m. If we're a pair of witnesses, do we ruin each other? What is considered a discrepancy in time that is so meaningful that we ruin each other's testimony and therefore we're no longer witnesses? And then once we figure out what is a meaningful discrepancy in time, we're going to ask, if people make a mistake in time by that amount, well, then what about by b'dikas chametz? Because the Mishnah that we just learned on Yud Aleph Amud Beis says that Rav Meir says that you're allowed to eat chametz in the 5th hour, but not in the 6th. Well, let's say that people by nature deviate in time by 2 hours. Well, then maybe we shouldn't be eating in the 5th hour. We should be restricted in the 5th hour. So what we're basically doing is we're going to jump into the world of testimony of edus and the deviations of the standard of deviation of time. And then we're going to extract from there back to our world of b'dikas chametz to see whether or not we can learn from one to the next. Hope that made sense. Okay. Here we go. We'll start again from the Gimel Mem, from the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down. This is a Mishnah from Maseches Sanhedrin that we will be referring to for much of the day today. Tanan, the Mishnah in Maseches Sanhedrin says as follows. Tanan Hasam. Echad Omer b'shnayim b'chodesh. One person says, I saw a capital crime take place on the 2nd day of the month. Echad Omer b'shlosha. The halacha is edusan kayemis. If I say that the murder took place on Beis Kislev, and you say it happened on Gimel Kislev, that's fine, because one of them knows how the months are established and one of them doesn't. So the Am Ha'aretz, the guy is like, whatever, it's Gimel. It's not really Gimel. He just doesn't know how to count. He just doesn't know the halachos of how to establish the month. Okay, that's case one. What would happen then if it's Echad Omer B'Shlosha? One said it was on the 3rd of the month. Be'echad Omer Behei, and the other one says no. It wasn't on the 3rd of the month. It was on the 5th of the month. That edusam b'tela. If they come in as a pair, we totally throw them out. Goodbye. Your timing is off. There's no way that one of you could say day 3 and one of you could say it was the 5th of the month and that you're both right. Just an unacceptable measure. Now that's talking about days of the month. Let's drill down to hours. Here we are. We're on the last short line on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Says the Gemara. Echad Omer b'shtei shos. One person said that the crime happened in hour 2. The Echad Omer b'shalosh shos. And one person said it happened in hour 3. Edusan kayemis. That is considered an acceptable deviation of time. If we're off by an hour, and we will drill in as to exactly whether or not this is an hour, because some say yes, some say no. So if our deviation of time, we walk in the room as a pair, I say the capital crime took place at 2 p.m. You say the capital crime took place at 3 p.m. The halacha is edusan kayemis. We accept their testimony. However, what happens if there's a 2-hour deviation in time between my testimony and yours? I say, and we're at the first of the longest lines here, Echad Omer b'shalosh. One person says that the capital crime took place at hour 3. The Echad Omer b'chamesh, and the other person said it's at 5. That's a machlokes. Edusan b'tela divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir holds that edus is not okay. A 2-hour deviation is not considered a reasonable deviation. Okay, that's considered too much, and that will undo the testimony, and it will all fall apart. And then Rabbi Yehuda Omer edusan kayemis. Rabbi Yehuda says, I do accept the 2-hour gap in time. I do think that 2 hours is reasonable. If I don't have my watch on me, I'm watching a crime happen. You say, what time is it? You're like, well, I davened shaf. I guess it's around 9. So Rabbi Yehuda is like, a person can easily make a 2-hour mistake. So therefore, if my edus is that the capital crime took place at 3 p.m., And your statement is that the capital crime took place at 5 p.m. Rabbi Yehuda says that's still considered reasonably good data, and we accept this set of witnesses. Third line of the wide lines. Echad omer bechamesh, ve'echad omer b'sheva. However, even Rabbi Yehuda, who accepts a 2-hour deviation in time, when that 2-hour deviation in time goes past chatzos, past the middle of the day, edusan betela. When I say I'm part one, right? I'm witness number one. I say it happened at 11 a.m. And your witness number two said no, it happened at 1 p.m. And halachic chatzos was in the middle. Halachic, not just noon, but like actually when the sun was directly above. So then the halacha is edusan betela. Why? The Mishnah there quoted here, the Mishnah Sanhedrin gives a reason. Shebechamesh chama b'mizrach uvesheva chama b'marav. Remember, we live in a different culture. We don't look up at the sun to find out what direction we're facing most often. When we need to daven and it's nighttime, we look where the sun's setting. But says the Gemara, back in the day, if I were to say as witness number one that the crime took place at the 5th hour at 11 a.m. and you said it happened at 1 p.m., the 7th hour. So then that means the sun, let's say that I'm center here. So the sun at sunrise, up, hour 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hour 6 is dead above, straight above you. And hour 7 is already in the western sky. So says the Gemara, that it may be a 2-hour gap. And normally Rabbi Yehuda embraces a 2-hour gap. But when the 2-hour gap is from the sun being in the eastern sky to the sun being in the western sky, that is the closed scene here. We are now done with this Mishnah, but we are really not done because we have a lot to analyze in this Mishnah. And now what we're going to do is as follows. As you see on the sheets, there are 3 shitas here. There's 2 shitas of Abaye. There's Abaye 1 and Abaye 2. And then Rava is going to totally knock Abaye out of the water. Rava will knock Abaye out of the water, and then we will be left with only Rava. And let's do Abaye number 1. Amar Abaye, 4 lines into the wide lines, Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Amar Abaye. Kshetim Salomar, when you analyze this Mishnah from Sanhedrin, here is approach number 1, says Abaye, of how I understand things. L'divrei Reb Meir, I could argue that according to Reb Meir, ein adam tov velo klum. We assume within Reb Meir, in Abaye number 1, that maybe people don't ever err when it comes to knowing what time it is. Everyone seems to just know what time it is. And when someone would go to Bezdin and they would say a time, we never assume that there's an error there. We'll have to see how that's true. That's how Abaye number 1 understood Rav Meir in the Mishnah and Sanhedrin. Rav Yehuda, L'divrei Rav Yehuda, Adam toach chatzisha. He says no. According to Rav Yehuda, the average error, the standard deviation in time is 30 minutes. If you ask me what time it is, I will potentially be off by up to 30 minutes, but no more. Good. Now, let's explain how each half of Abaye number 1 makes sense. We're first going to explain what he said about Rav Meir, that we don't make errors in time. And then we're going to explain Rav Yehuda that there's a 30-minute deviation. L'divrei Rav Meir ein adam toev velo klum. People don't make mistakes about time. So in our Mishnah and Sanhedrin that we just saw, everyone seemed to agree that in a case where I said as witness 1 that the crime took place at hour 2, and when you said hour 3, everyone held edusan kayemes. Everyone held that the edus was good, the testimony was valid. How? How does that work if we say that Rav Meir says people don't make a mistake in time? So says the Gemara, L'divrei Rav Meir, 10 lines from the bottom. L'divrei Rav Meir, ein adam tov velo klum. What does Rav Meir mean? How does he understand the Mishnah and Sanhedrin when he says that there's no mistakes? It's very simple. Maisa kihava, when did this crime actually take place? It happened in one singular moment in time, b'meipak tarte, as we left the 2nd hour, u'me'ayol tlas, and as we were going into the 3rd hour. Now, to be clear, we're just going to assume a perfect day of sunrise is at 6 and sunset is at 9. So hour 1 is hour 0. Basically, we're going from 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 and 8 to 9. So we're talking about someone who claimed hours 2 and hours 3. So that's what we're talking about here. So says the Gemara, at that time, here's what you had. That's not the right line. The episode, the capital crime, took place at the end of the 2nd hour, beginning of the 3rd. And when the Mishnah and Sanhedrin, when witness number 1 said, I testified that it happened in hour number 2, he meant that it was happening at the end of hour number 2. And the person who said the 3rd hour, so let's say that you have here, you have 1 hour here and 1 hour here, but everyone's really hovering around the same minute. I'm at the end of hour 2 and you're at the beginning of hour 3. It's mamish the same time, says the Gemara in the name of Rav Meir. This is all Abaye number 1, who says that Rav Meir holds that there is no such thing as making an error in time. And again, Abaye number 1, to finish out his thought, L'divrei Rabbi Yehuda, how does Rabbi Yehuda say Adam toach chatzisha? How does the math work out according to Rabbi Yehuda within the Mishnah from Sanhedrin? Maisa, what actually took place? Maisa kihava, when was the capital crime actually happening? The palga da arbahava. That's happening in halfway through the 4th hour in the day. So if sun rises at 6, the 4th hour of the day is going to be, it'll be the beginning of the 4th hour is in the 9th. So this crime took place at 9:30 in the morning. So that's kipalga da arba, halfway toward the 4th hour. The haydek amar shalosh, the sof, haydek amar shalosh, and when it says, when witness number 1 said, I saw this took place in the 3rd hour, he meant bisof shalosh. V'katae palga shaita l'kameh. He said it happened at the end of the 3rd hour. Really, it happened halfway through the 4th hour, but he was off by 30 minutes. So he said the crime took place at 8:59. He was wrong. The crime took place at 9:30. So he was just off by 30 minutes, in line with Rabbi Yehuda's deviation of the way people look at time. The haydeka amar chamesh, and when the second witness said that really no, this didn't take place at it just didn't take place at the 3rd hour. It took place at the 5th hour. That was betchilas chamesh. That second witness meant that it took place in the earlier part of the 5th hour, the katay palga shaita la'achore, and he was a half hour late to the game because really the crime, as mentioned, took place at 4:30. So that's where the deviation is, because the way that Rabbi Yehuda understands the Mishnah and Sanhedrin is that the crime took place at 4:30. The person who said, the witness number 1 who said the crime took place at 3 meant the end of that hour, which was 30 minutes before 4:30. And the second witness who said that the crime took place at the 5th hour, he said it was really in the 5th hour. He was a half hour late. So that's a deviation on each side. Each witness was off by a half hour. All of this is Abaye number 1. And now let's learn Abaye number 2. You can look at this in the notes here. It says here, Abaye number 1, Rav Meir, no discrepancy allowed in testimony at all. Rabbi Yehuda, 30 minutes is allowed. That's how we understand Abaye number 1 as we try to extract this information from the Mishnah and Sanhedrin. Abaye number 2, Ika de Amre, 5 lines from the bottom, Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Ika de Amre, there are those who say that Amar Abaye had a different approach. Kishatim Salomar, when we look in the Mishnah from Sanhedrin about which testimonies are acceptable and not, then we have a different way to understand Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Here's how we understand Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, and then we'll explain each one. L'divrei Rav Meir adam toeh mashehu. People do make mistakes in time, but only small mistakes. And l'divrei Rabbi Yehuda adam toeh sha'u mashehu. And according to that, no, you do make a mistake in time. Rabbi Yehuda says we're normal, we're regular people. We normally make a mistake about an hour, maybe an hour and a couple of minutes, but not much more than that. Now, how do we understand each of these opinions within Abaye number 2? L'divrei Rav Meir, 3 lines from the bottom. L'divrei Rav Meir adam toeh mashehu. According to Abaye number 2, whose understanding from the Mishnah and Sanhedrin is that people do make small time mistakes when trying to guess the time. Maisa kihava, what actually took place? When did it take place? O besof shtayim hava, o betchilas shalosh. It happened either at the end of the 2nd hour, a few minutes before 8, or it happened at the end of at the beginning of the 3rd hour, a few minutes after 9. So it could be a 10-minute spread. We don't know which one it actually was. And one of you guys is off by 10 minutes. We don't know who. This is considered an acceptable testimony in the eyes of Rav Meir. People have a deviation in time of about 10 minutes. Now, what did Abaye number 2, Abaye's second approach, understand for Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda, now we're on the last line at Aleph Amud Beis. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Adam toeh sha'u mashehu. Yes, he says that people make a mistake of about an hour. Maisa kihava, when was the capital crime actually done? O bisof shalosh, o bitchilas chamesh. It happened at the end of the 3rd hour. It either happened at 8:45 or it happened at 10:15, the end of the 3rd hour or the beginning of the 4th hour. So it's an hour plus. That is a normal deviation. And he still says that the crime is the deviation in time is close enough to say that the edus is kasher. So I'm aid number 1, and I say it happened at 8:50 in the morning, and you're aid number 2, and you say it happened at 10:05 in the morning. So says Rabbi Yehuda, that's still considered a valid set of witnesses because the deviation is in the 1 hour range, which was acceptable to him. One of the people, we're now on the top of Yud Beis Amud Aleph, somebody's wrong. So then what happened is Azal Rav Huna Bered Rav Yehuda. Rav Huna Bered Rav Yehuda heard these 2 versions of Abaye. He heard these 2 expressions of how to understand Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda from the Mishnah and Sanhedrin, and he shared them with Rava. Amra l'shmaitisa kame de Rava. Rava heard this. He's like, hold on one second. We have a very, very, very basic law when it comes to capital crimes that in halacha are punishable by death. We have a very important halacha that Abaye has seemingly ignored. And not only is it ignoring it, but it's halachically usher. You were mavatal the mitzvah of trying to save someone's life, and you might have killed someone incorrectly. How so? So says Rava as follows, third line. Amar, Uma ilu daikinon bahani sade. What did Abaye say? One of the versions of Abaye, for example, was that Rav Meir says that it was the end of the second hour and the beginning of the third, which is like no time apart. And therefore, the guy is going to be put to death because my testimony counts. So says the Gemara, and Rava is arguing against Abaye, but what if you're wrong? What if it wasn't the end of the second and the beginning of the third? What if it was the beginning of the second and the end of the third? Then, according to Rav Meir, your testimony should be batel, should be ignored. But you're going to put someone to death based on the assumption that it was the end of the second hour, beginning of the third, when the Mishnah doesn't stipulate that? Rava's like, what? He's like incredulous a little bit. He's like, I don't understand. If I would have made a different inference with Rav Meir or with any of the versions of Abaye, maybe we would have said that instead of saying that everything was right near the change of the hour and there's really little time, to change over, maybe they're further apart and the edus should be batel. But if you don't do that and you go with like Abaye said, you could end up killing someone, which really the testimony was false because the deviation of time was too large. So that's what Rava says here. The have edus mukreshes. Really, these two people, their edus from the pair. Aid 1 and Aid 2, witness 1 and 2, they conflict against each other. Their testimony should be thrown out. The lo katalinon, we wouldn't kill someone on that case. The ana neku v'niktal nisfeka, because you want to read the Mishnah in Sanhedrin in a way where we say, instead of saying that it's the second hour and the third hour and there's an hour gap, we say, no. We meant in 8:59 and 9:01. So narrow, so close in time. Why? Why are you saying that? You're going to kill someone. Your testimony is only valid if you're 2 minutes apart. But if you look at that Mishnah and say the second hour doesn't mean the end of the second hour, it means the beginning of the second hour and the end of the third. Now we're 120 minutes apart. That means if my edus is beginning of second hour and yours is end of third, that's edus hakrasha. We conflict with each other. Our edus is thrown out. So Rava says to Abaye, you're going to literally kill someone with false testimony the way that you just understood the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. So Rava says absolutely not, and he quotes a pasuk to support his own cause. V'rachmana Amar, we know that we have a pasuk in the Torah. The pasuk says, "V'shaftu ha'eda." That's not the right pasuk. It's "V'shaftu ha'eda" is the beginning of the pasuk, and then the rest of the pasuk reads later, "V'hitzilu ha'eda." It's a drasha that we make every effort not to kill someone in Beis Din. We don't want to do capital punishments. Skila, Sreifa, Harag, and Chenek are terrible. And that's why elsewhere in Shas, we've learned that a Beis Din Achzari, a cruel Beis Din, would kill someone once in 70 years. It was extremely rare. You needed a perfect storm. Everything had to go perfectly wrong to kill someone in Beis Din. And this is an example of being irresponsible about it, says Rava. You made an inference in a Mishnah that literally could kill someone incorrectly. So therefore, Rava gives his own answer, his own explanation about what Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda meant in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. We're 8 lines down, Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Ela Amar Rava says, we haven't spoken about B'dikas Chametz yet. We'll get there on the next Amud, but just stay with the question. It's a long one. Ela Amar Rava, how must we understand the Mishnah in Sanhedrin? L'divrei Rav Meir. What is the Shita of Rav Meir? What does Rav Meir really hold? Adam toeh shtei sha'os chaser mashu. People really make a mistake of 2 hours. Do you know why he's saying that? Because in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin that we have on the Amud Beis, on Yud Aleph Amud Beis, it says that according to everyone, if I say as witness number 1 that the crime took place at hour 2, and you say that the crime took place at hour 3, what is the most time that could exist between hour 2 and 3? It's the beginning of 2 and the end of 3, 120 minutes, well, just about. And that's why, says the Gemara, says Rava, that L'divrei Rav Meir Adam toeh shtei sha'os chaser mashu. Really, he's going to say that the amount of time of deviation that a person can have is up to 2 hours. It's really, let's call it 1 hour and 59 minutes. Okay. And L'divrei Rabbi Yehuda, what would Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda is even more lenient. Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that I lost my spot here. The Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Adam Toesh Shalosh Shos Chaser Mashu, that really he would hold 3 hours minus a little bit. Okay, let's explain. Let's finish explaining Rava, and we'll take a brief break to look at the sheet for a second. L'divrei Rab Meir. How does Rava understand Rab Meir? The 2 hours. Adam Toesh Shos Chaser Mashu. How does he work out that Rab Meir holds up to 2 hours? That a normal deviation in time is up to 2 hours. Says the Gemara, Maisa Kihava, when did the capital crime take place? Either at the beginning of the second hour or the end of the third, which is 1 hour and 59 minutes apart, approximately. One of the Eidim was off. He made a mistake from the word tos. He made a mistake. Beis shows chaser mashu of 2 hours minus a little bit, 1 hour and 55 minutes, whatever the number is. And how did Rava understand Rabbi Yehuda from the Mishnah and Sanhedrin that we're working off of? Halfway down in Yud Beis Amud Aleph, l'divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Adam toesh shalosh shos chaser mashu. Really, the deviation could be up to 3 hours. Maisa kihava. When did the capital crime take place according to Rabbi Yehuda? Oh, b'tchilas shalosh or b'sof chamesh, because that was the case where he said that even though we deviate by 2 hours, aid number 1 says it happened in hour 3. Aid number 2 said it happened in hour 5, as the Mishnah in Sanhedrin quotes. So he says, go from the beginning of hour 3 to the end of hour 5. That's all of hour 3, all of hour 4, and all of hour 5. That's up to 3 hours. And that's why, says Rava, the Rabbi Yehuda holds up to 3 hours. And any one person could have made a mistake in math up to 3 hours. Okay. So if we look at the sheet for a second, there are 3 sheets. I made one tiny error here in bullet point number 3 with Rava. It should not be 2 plus hour discrepancy. It should be 2 minus hour discrepancy. I'll change that for the Google Doc. But thank you. But these are, I'm so glad you're capturing all of the details. It's perfect. So that's what the Gemara says here. Abai number 1, Abai number 2, and Abai number 3. We rejected Abai 1 and 2. We will see it again later in the Gemara in order to flesh it out. But we now, for the next Amud or so, are going to learn within the world of Rava. And Rava had a great argument, which was, Abaye, you're going to kill somebody, and that's dangerous. You cannot make an assumption within the Mishnah in Sanhedrin that it's always at the closer amount of time. Maybe it's at the larger amount of time, and really, the Eidus is a stira. Maybe the 2 Eidim don't fit with one another. Good. This is all half number 1 of the question. Okay. So now what we've learned is that people have a standard deviation of time. According to Rav Meir, up to 2 hours, and according to Rav Yehuda, people can make a mistake up to 3 hours. Says the Gemara halfway down, Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Whenever we had an aid come to Beis Din, we would grill each of the 2 aidim separately, and we'd ask them a set of 7 questions. These 7 questions, if they were not answered, all 7 of them, you were outright thrown out of court. Done. These 7 things were an absolute minimum, and here's what they are. Be'ezeh shavua, this word shavua is representative of a Shemitah cycle. Which Shemitah cycle out of the Yovel are we talking about? Question 1. Question 2, Be'ezeh Shana, which year of the Shemitah cycle? Be'ezeh Chodesh, which month of the year in the Shemitah cycle? Be'kama b'chodesh, what was the date of the month? Yud Zayin Kislev, what was the date of the month? Be'ezeh Yom, what day of the week was it? Be'ezo Shah, what hour was it? And Be'ezo Makom, in what place, where did it take place? If you don't answer all of these, you are simply not a witness. Now, in secular courts, that's not true. You walk in and you say, Tuesday afternoon, I saw this person do this. They said, exactly what time it was. Even if you're wrong, they're going to keep you in court because you saw something. Halacha says, no, v'hitzilu ha'eda. The standard to put someone to death with capital crime is so high that we do what's called drisha v'chakira. They grill you, they interrogate you in a legal way to make sure that you understand that you're doing something serious. You leave out one piece of information from these 7 questions, done. The post can say, we don't know when Shemitah is nowadays. True, in Ochanami. Whatever the basic facts are, they have to be on the table. What color was the person wearing? What car were they driving? All of that is in the second category, which we'll learn about in a minute. So it says the Gemara as follows. Vitanya, the Brisa writes on this Mishnah. This is the Mishnah that describes the 7 questions. The Brisa writes, Ma ben chakiros lebdikos. What's the difference between chakiros, these fundamental 7 questions, and bedikos, other types of questions to capture other details? Says the Gemara, 2 lines before the wide lines. Chakiros, with these fundamental questions, says the Gemara, Amar echad men eni odea edusim betela. If anybody says, I don't know the answer, what day of the week it is, what date it was, you're done for. There is no more edus, you're thrown out of court. Your testimony is not relevant. Bidikos, when it comes to all of the other details beyond these core 7 questions, what color was the shirt? What kind of car were they driving? Whatever the other details are that are not the chakiros, but the bidikos, the more simple questions. Afilu shnein omer einan yodim. I don't know what color shirt he was wearing. I couldn't tell. There we still say dusan kayemes v'havinan ba. And when we analyze this distinction between chakiros and bedikos, why is it the case? Says the Gemara, Maishna chakiros and Maishna bedikos. What's the difference between them? So says the Gemara, ve'amrinan, we would explain the difference between chakira questions and bedika questions as follows. Chakiros, Amar echad mehen eini yodea edusam betela. Why do we say with these core 7 questions that if you don't answer one, there's no testimony at all? 6 lines from the bottom, Dahavyale. We're not going to go into detail now. We're very short on time. But the Gemara basically says that your core testimony has to be refutable. It has to be refutable by another set of witnesses. And the way we refute another set of witnesses is with an argument called imanu hayisem. You can't be a witness because you were with me in this place at that time. But if you're missing any of these 7 questions, it's not possible to bring a contradicting pair of witnesses, and therefore, if you don't answer all 7 questions, you're not eligible to be a witness. But bediko, 6 lines from the bottom, that is something where someone can say, you're wrong, the shirt was yellow, the shirt wasn't blue. Good. Let's continue. And if, Rava, you're going to say that people make all of these mistakes, 2 hours for Rav Meir, up to 3 hours for Rabbi Yehuda, chakiros, then how does it work? I don't understand. You're saying Rav Meir says something crazy. Rav Meir says you can have a 2-hour deviation, or Rav Yehuda says you can have a 3-hour deviation. But that should be a chasha. That should be a contradiction in terms. If I'm witness 1 and I say it happened at hour 3, and you're witness 2 and it happened at hour 5, that should be the end of the conversation. You've assumed such a massive inclusion of error. It's such a large amount of time. Says the Gemara, you're right. We factor in this error. This error is woven into the din that we assume, according to Rav Meir, that people make up to a 2-hour error in time, and someone else will make a 3-hour error in time, according to Rav Yehuda. And now, how do we plug in Rava into this new construct of time? Now we know because one of the questions of the Chakiros was, what time did it happen? How does Rava explain Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in this regard? Says the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Meir, Yahavinan lehu mitchila shah rishona ad sof chamesh. This is a little nuanced. Rav Meir, who in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin was talking about a case where aid 1 said hour 2, and aid 1 said that the crime happened in hour 2, and aid 2 said that the crime happened in hour 3. So then that means that each person can be off by up to 2 hours. Ubedinhu, really, it shouldn't just be that the range of time is 1 to 5, like it says here, Shah Rishona at Sof Chamesh. Really, it should have been more, because witness number 1 said hour 2. We shouldn't have gone back only to hour 1. He could have made a 2-hour error in any direction. We should have gone back to sunrise. But we can't do that. Ubedinhu, Denesi Luhume Karatz Fei. We should have gone back earlier for witness number 1, but we can't. Because why? People don't make a mistake from before Neitachama to after. Before the sun rises to after, that just means you're not paying attention. You're not a good witness at that point. Ula Rabbi Yehuda, whose first witness said it happened in hour 3, and his second witness said it happened in hour 5. So then the span of error is even larger. Rabbi Yehuda, he has a 6-hour span when things can go wrong. Really, the span of error is so large, really, we should have gone earlier than Shah Rishona. But for the same reason, by Rav Meir turning to the top of Yud Beis and Beis Alabenya Mama Lelelia Lo Tau Inshi, but no one's going to ever make the error of saying from before sunrise to after. No one's going to do that. So the range of error is only from hour 1 to hour 6. But the hours should be even later in the day. Why don't we say the hour is? If witness number 2 said that the crime happened at the 5th hour of the day, what's 3 hours? It should be up to hour 8. It doesn't work that way. We should have given him more time, but we don't need to, because at the 5th hour of the day, once we get to that point, even though in theory the margin of error is 3 hours, but it's not relevant, because anyone who says that hour 5 that's on the different side of the sky, so we don't mess around with that. That we just assume no one would make that mistake. Good. Now we've learned everything we need to know to ask the question that the Gemara has been intending to ask for the last 50 lines. And at this point, we should at least have a remnant of a clue. Let's dig in. Third line, Yud Beis Amud Beis. Tanan, the Mishnah writes, our Mishnah from Yud Aleph Amud Beis that we learned a day ago. The Mishnah writes, Rav Meir Omer, in regards to the Isser Derabanan of Chametz, Ochlen Kol Hey, we are allowed to eat Chametz in the 5th hour of the day. Visorfen B'tchilas Vav, where we have to burn chametz in the beginning of the 6th, and we're not allowed to eat chametz at that time, Isser Derabanan, and then the Isser Deraisa kicks in at the end of the 6th hour. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ochlen Kol Daled. You can eat all of the 4th hour, but V'tolen Kol Hey. We have a second Isser hour. We're not allowed to eat chametz on the 5th hour of the day, and V'sorfen B'tchilas Vav, we burn it in the 6th hour, and we cannot eat it in the 6th hour. So then that's what our Mishnah said. So now the Gemara was basically asking the following question. If it's true, according to Rav Meir, that people make an error of 2 hours in time, so then why does Rav Meir only add 1 hour for the Isser Derabanan of not eating chametz on Erev Pesach? And if Rav Yehuda says that the standard deviation of the human being is 3 hours, then why does he only have 2 hours of the Isser Derabanan of not eating chametz on Erev Pesach? What we're learning from the world of Edus is that the standard deviation of Rav Meir is 2 hours. People make that much of an error in time. And the standard deviation in time, the mistake is up to 3 hours for Rabbi Yehuda. That doesn't align with the Mishnah B'dikas Chametz. Let's dig in. And now we're going to go through all of the opinions that we have on the page here. Le'abaye, it may help to keep it at the side. It depends what type of learning style you have in your head. Le'abaye, 5th, 6th line, Yud Beis Amud Beis. According to Abaye, Aliba de Rab Meir de Amar Ein Adam Toev Lo Klum. This is Abaye number 1 that we learned a while ago, earlier today. So if people don't make a mistake, Rab Meir, then why did you make it usher in the 6th hour? Nechul Kulashis. You should be able to eat the whole 6th hour until a minute before chametz. After all, Rav Meir, people don't make mistakes. So if people don't make mistakes with time, this is Abaye number 1, then we should be able to eat up until the minute that chametz kicks in midaraisa, which is the beginning of the 7th hour. Ulahach lishna nami de amar adam toemashu. And even according to Abaye number 2, who says that within Rav Meir that yes, people do make a mistake of a few minutes, fine. Then necholat sofshis. Then wait until the end of the 6th hour, go 6 hours and 55 minutes. People only make small mistakes in time. But why did you make all of the 6th hour usher? You say, Rav Meir, within Abaye 1 and 2, that the deviation is either 0 or very little. Why did you add a whole hour of Isser Derabanan? And as well for Rav Yehuda, Abaye, Alibad Rav Yehuda, going back to Abaye number 1, what did Rav Yehuda say there? Damar Adam Toach Hatisha. According to Rav Yehuda, within Abaye number 1, people only make a mistake of a half hour. Then you too. You said the whole 5th hour was usher too. But if people only make a deviation, make a mistake in time by 30 minutes, necholad palga deshis. We should be able to eat chametz until 6.5 hours into the day because people only make a mistake with time up to 30 minutes. And according to Abaye number 2 within Rav Yehuda, lahach lishna nami da'amars adam toa shav emashu. And even if you want to say Abaye number 2 that Rav Yehuda holds that a person makes a mistake of an hour and a little bit, necholad sofhei, subtract an hour and a little bit from the zman isser derais of chametz. That begins at the end of the 6th hour. Subtract an hour and a little bit. So end of the 5th hour. So why still? I don't understand, Rav Yehuda. Why are you being so machmir? That a whole extra hour. None of your deviations make any sense. And now the Gemara is going to answer these questions before we get to Rabbi, because this is only the Abaye questions. Says the Gemara, according to Abaye, you're right. You're right. You can't learn anything from the last 60 lines of Gemara. You can't compare Edus, the deviation in time of Edus to Chametz. Why not, says the Gemara? Amar Abaye. Edus Mesurah Lizrizim. The people who will qualify to be Azaris, they're like type A people, right? They kind of, they everything is checked off, every box is good. They're type A personalities. And they're only a certain profile who will make a good aid. Not everyone's good at it. Some people pay better attention. But chametz l'kol masur. No, this is for the masses. It's like in public policy. You got to think of the masses. But when it comes to the individual, the mindset of the person who's going to be an aid, he's considered a zaris. Therefore, says Abaye, everything I said over there by Edus may well be true, but it doesn't come over here. We can't ask our questions against chametz because by chametz, Says the Gemara, Abai's whole world of comparison. There is no intersection. This language I wrote here in the sheet. There is no intersection of the laws of witnesses as it relates to chametz. But that's only Abai. Now let's dig into Rava, who we hold like. We're a quarter of the way down. We're totally not going to finish tonight. The Rava, Aliba de Rav Meir. Rava, remember that Rava said about Rav Meir, the Amar Adam Toash Teishaos Chaser Mashu, that a person can make a deviation of 2 hours. So then mitchilas hey lo nechal. According to Rava, Rav Meir said that the only isser is the 5th hour. That the only isser of eating is in the 6th hour. But if people make a 2-hour deviation, then you shouldn't be allowed to eat from the 5th hour. Answers the Gemara, don't worry. Yes, you're right. It's correct, says Rav Meir, that people have a 2-hour deviation, but here it doesn't apply because what do we say about the 5th hour? We've said it twice already. Here's the 3rd time. Hey, chama b'mizrach v'zayin chama b'marav. No one will make that error. We know what the 5th hour looks like in the sky. Okay. Ihachi, if what you're saying is that the 5th hour no one makes a mistake with, then and that's why you have no Isser D'Rabbanan there. Ihachi, b'shis nami nechal. Well, maybe no one will make a mistake in the 6th hour either. Says the Gemara, Amar Rab Ada Bar Abba, Shis Yoma Bikarna Sakai. Shis, the 6th hour, Yoma Bekarna Sakai. Rashi here on the side explains that the sun is right above you and will very quickly tilt in one direction toward the west, and therefore we don't mess around with that either. That was all Rava within Rav Meir. The Rava Libed Rav Yehuda, the Amar Adam Toa Gimel Shos Chaser Mashu. According to Rava, who says that there's a 3-hour deviation in time, Mitchilas Dalid Lo Nechal. What did Rav Yehuda hold in our Mishnah in Yud Aleph Amud Beis? Not the Mishnah on Sanhedrin, our Mishnah about chametz. He said 4th hour is permissible to eat, 5th and 6th are off limits. He said that there's 2 hours of Isser D'Rabbanan. But if you believe that people make a 3-hour error, you shouldn't be able to eat in the 4th hour either. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, the Rava Liba de Yehuda da Amar Adam Toa Gimel Shos Chaser Mashu Mitchilas Dalad Lo Nechal. You shouldn't be able to eat in the 4th hour either. Why did you say it was allowed? So answers the Gemara. First of all, the 5th hour, hey, Chama b'mizrach. No one's going to make a mistake of 5 hours or earlier. It's so low in the sky. So let's just pretend that I am the horizon here. The sun rises. Hour 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 5's kind of close, but even there, the Gemara says people don't make a mistake. 4, kol shekain. Don't worry about it. That's so far away from the middle that we don't have to worry about it. So that's why Rav Yehuda is not concerned about the 4th hour. Says the Gemara, but if what you're saying is that the 5th hour isn't concerning Rav Yehuda, so then why do you have an Isser D'Rabbanan in the 5th hour? Then just say it's mutter to eat. You just said that 5 is fine and 4 is all the more so fine. So why does our Mishnah say the 5th hour is problematic for you? Why did you already begin the Isser D'Rabbanan of eating chametz at the 5th hour? Says the Gemara, Tirgama Abaye Aliba de Rava. This is interesting. Abaye answers for Rava. He answers this question for Rava. Here in this space, he gives the same answer that he gave him for himself. Eidus Mesur Lizrizim Chametz Lakol Masur. He says that when it comes to hour 5, at that point, no one's very good about it anymore. The masses are not good about hour 5. It's too close to the center of the sky. They're not good about it. Okay, very good. But then the Gemara gives a different reason. It says, Rava Amar. Rava says back to Abaye. That's not why Rav Yehuda doesn't allow you to eat in the 5th hour. He gives a different answer. But Rava Amar, Lav Hainu Taimad Rav Yehuda, Ela Rav Yehuda L'Ta'ameh. Really, it's all because Rav Yehuda follows his own shita about the 5th hour. The Amar Ein Biur Chametz Ela Sreifa. The only Biur Chametz that counts is burning food. So therefore, because you need to burn, you need fuel. So what are you going to do during the 5th hour? We give you the hour to get the fuel to burn the chametz because that's the only way the Rabbi Yehuda allows for sreifa to take place is with fire. So that 5th hour, it has nothing to do with people aren't good at telling time. That 5th hour is so that you have the time to go collect some firewood to make a nice pyre and to build what you need to build in order to burn your chametz. Says the Gemara, that last answer does not resonate. When does Rabbi Yehuda hold that that biur chametz is only with sreifa? That's shelo b'shas biyuro. Big machlokas Rashi Tosfos here. Take a look on your own time. Shelo b'shas biyuro. There's only some times when Rabbi Yehuda holds that sreifa has to be done by biur. Aval b'shas biyuro hashbasaso b'chol davar. But at other times he'll say that you can destroy it in any way you want. So therefore you can't say the 5th hour is to collect firewood. It's not, because it's not always true that the 5th hour is going to need to be done by biur. Maybe you can pour bleach on it. Maybe you can flush it down the toilet. Fine. So therefore, the Rava pivots and explains the fifth hour in yet a different way. What we're concerned about is when there's a cloudy day. We can't see the sun, therefore we don't know where it is. And because the fifth hour is so close, so he's like, anything near the fifth hour, I'm sorry, that's where the Isser D'Rabbanan of Chametz kicks in, according to Rabbi Yehuda within Rava. Well, if you're concerned about a cloudy day with hour 5, even though it's true that the fourth hour is even further away from the center of the sky, but maybe it's still a confusing hour. Maybe it would also be the case that by the fourth hour, we should also say you can't eat chametz because it's cloudy. We don't know where the sun is, and maybe it's too late in the day. So says the Gemara, Amar Papa, don't worry about it. Dalid Zman Su'uda L'kolhi. The fourth hour of the day, everyone's hitting brunch. Everyone. That is the time to eat, fourth hour of the day. So again, assume a perfect day, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. So that means 1 hour is 7, 2 hours is 8, 3 hours is 9. This is a 10 o'clock brunch, right? That's what the Gemara says. Everybody eats at that time. Says the Gemara, that's not true. 9 to 10 brunch. What? 9 to 10 brunch. Is it 9 to 10? 6 is 0. Hour 1 brings you to 9. Hour 1 brings you to 7. Whatever. It should be 10 o'clock. No? Fourth hour? I don't know. Okay, we'll discuss that later. Tana Rabbanan. The rabbis say that this answer can't be right. People don't eat brunch at the fourth hour. Tana Rabbanan. Shari Shona, the first hour of the day is Machaludim, a group of people who would eat very early. Shnia, in the second hour of the day is Machalistin, the robbers. The early bird gets the worm. They'd wake up early, pack in a good breakfast, and then go rob people. Shlishis, Michael Yorshin. That's the day when they had an inheritance, kick their feet up on the chase. Everything is good. You're good. Revis, the fourth hour is Machal Polim. We said the fourth hour should have been the time that everybody, that was our Papa's answer, why the fourth hour is safe, because everybody's eating. That's not what this Tosefta says. This Tosefta says something totally different. Not a Tosefta, it's a Brisa. And the Brisa continues, Chamishis Machal Tamidi Chachamim. Chachamim wait till the fifth hour. Shishis Machal Kol Adam. And the sixth hour is when everybody else eats. So this contradicts what Rav Papa said. V'hamar Rav Papa, Revis Mansu de L'Kol Hi, and that's not correct. So answer the Gemara El Epoch. You got to switch it. Revis is really Michael Kol Adam. The Bryce is incorrect. It should say like Rav Papa did, that the fourth hour is Michael Kol Adam, the fifth hour Chamish is Michael Poalim, Shish is Michael Tamid Chachamim, and the sixth hour is when the Tamid Chachamim eat. That's lunchtime already. Mikan Va'elach. If a person waits to eat until after that, they haven't eaten in the whole morning. Kizorek Evan Lechemes. It's like throwing a rock into a well. That is a homily of sorts where it's not very good for you. You should make sure you eat breakfast. Famous Gemara Bava Kama, Shitin Rihute Rihad, 60 running people. Lomata Lechad Gafar Mitzafar Karach. They cannot catch the one guy who ate his breakfast. That's what the Gemara Bava Kama writes. Okay, what it means, we can learn about it in a couple of years. I don't know when we're going to get there. We'll get there in a while, but it's a long time away. So now we have our answer. Amar Rabbi Lo Amran. When do we say that eating in the middle of the day is a problem? That's only true. That's if you haven't eaten anything all day, nothing. If you ate something in the morning, less lanba, no problem at all. Okay, we've asked our question. We've answered our question. We wanted to know what the intersection was between the laws of how we view time deviations in Edus and how we apply that to our world here. And we've answered those questions on this page in regards to Abaye. We rejected the comparison outright. And with Rava, we answered the question in a very nuanced way in the middle aspect of this Amud. We're 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Ravashi says something that's seemingly obvious. The machlokes that we have by Edus applies to chametz as well. What does that mean? So according to the Rishonim here, what it means is that the standard deviation of error applies in both cases. It's just that there are different things going on over here than there are over there. By Edus, Rav Meir holds that the time error will be up to 2 hours, and Rabbi Yehuda holds up to 3 hours. That's a psychology, and it applies here too. So says the Gemara, well, Pshita, that's why we compared the two cases, because we assumed that Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda were speaking about a psychology of people, and that the error in telling time in the world of Edus should be the error of telling time over here too. So what are you trying to do? Pshita. Hainu hachde amrina. That's why we made this comparison. Says the Gemara, no hakamashmalan shinui the shanin and shinuyu. The answers that we've given above, that there really are valid answers. And I don't want you to think, v'lo tema tanaihi, I don't want you to think that there's like a different set of psychological assumptions here. The psychological assumption of the world of Edus is an error, is a time error of 2 hours for Rav Meir, 3 hours for Rav Yehuda. That applies here too. The numbers in the Mishnah about the Isser D'Rabbanan of Chametz doesn't work out. That's true, but it's for extenuating circumstances. It's not because we don't believe in the psychology. Next, and the last sugya we're probably going to get to for tonight, says the Gemara. We are 4 lines from the bottom. Amar of Simi, Amar Rav Simi bar Ashi lo shana ela b'sha'os. This is only true what we've learned from hours that are taking place during the day. Aval echad omer kodem hanetz. If one witness says that the capital crime took place before the sun rose, ve'echad omer achar hanetz achama, and one says it took place after, edusan betela. It could be a 5-minute difference. But before the sun breaks the horizon and after, you're not ma'aretz if you can't tell the difference. That's on you. Says the Gemara Pshita. Yeah, if the sun's not up, you can't tell that the sun's not up. Ella, what must be the pshat in this statement of Rav Simi? Ella echad omer kodem hanetzachama ve'echad omer besoch hanetzachama. One said, aid number one said the capital crime took place at 6:55 when Netzachama was at 7. The other one said it was literally during Netzachama. And maybe we had a havamina that it would be okay. Says the Gemara that it's edusan betela. That doesn't work. The edus is still canceled. Says Gemara, good hanami pshita. What? So what? You're either on the same page or you're not. You're either 5 minutes before. What does it mean during? As the rays are coming up, good. Then you're after the other guy. The other guy said it's before Nates. You're saying it's during. It's still that's obvious. Says the Gemara, Ma'u Detema, what might you have thought? You might have thought as follows. Tarvaihu, maybe the case of Kodem Nates and Besoch Nates, maybe when one person said, when witness number one said it was before Netzachama, and witness number two said it's during Netzachama, maybe we would have thought, Tarvaihu, both of them, Chada Milsa Ka'amre. The two of them are really saying the same thing. And says the Gemara, maybe we would have thought, that it's as the sun was coming up. Maybe we'd say it really wasn't the sun. It's just like right before the sun comes up, things look super bright on the horizon. Have a meaning that it's really the same time. Kamash Malan that they are not the same thing. Let's just do a drop before we close out. We're going to have too much to do on Shabbos. Or on Yud Gimel Amid Aleph, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav, Halacha Rav Yehuda. We paskin in our Mishnah like Rav Yehuda that there are 2 hours of Isser of Achila. Hour 5 and hour 6 is an Isser Derabanan, which prevent us from the Isser Deoraisa of Chametz, which starts in hour 7. This is Halacha L'Mais. We paskin this way. Amar Le Rav Rav Nachman, the name Amar Halacha Rav Meir. We have another reason to assume that the Halacha is like Rav Meir. Why? Because the Sasam Lantana Kavasei. We have another Mishnah that seems to have held like Rav Meir. What was the Mishnah? Ditznan, kol shasha muter le'echol machil. Rashi here explains that we're talking about feeding animals, and any hour in which you're able to feed an animal, you're also allowed to eat yourself. And this implies that even the 5th hour would be mutter to eat. Says the Gemara, you can't bring a raya from there. Hahi lav stamahu. That Mishnah is not a stam Mishnah. We're not going to learn today why that's the case. Mishum dekasha mutter, because the language of that Mishnah, which we're going to learn on Daf Chaf Aleph in another week or so, that Mishnah had the word mutter in it, which actually made us learn that Mishnah that it wasn't actually like Rav Meir, and therefore we would not follow him. So just one last thing, and then we will stop for the evening. But maybe we should say the name Amar Halacha Karaban Gamliel Dahavale Machria. If you were to flip back to the Mishnah in Yud Aleph Amud Beis, you'll see 3 shitas. We have Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda, and we have Rabban Gamliel. So maybe we should paskin like Rabban Gamliel. Why are you saying the halacha is like Rav Yehuda? Says the Gemara, Amar Le, Rabban Gamliel lav machriyahu. He wasn't deciding between the two. He was actually simply explaining Rav Yehuda to say that even Rav Yehuda would allow for truma to be eaten during that 5th hour where things are being tolen. He was saying tam denaf shekamar. He was just making an explanation. And we'll just have to stop here. We're going to start on Shabbos from V'i Bais Ema on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, about 10 lines down. Sorry for the lengthy shir. Have a beautiful night. I'm going to start at 11 a.m.